Donald Trump is back in the White House. King Charles is on the throne. And if you think this is just another political transition, you're missing one of the most fascinating dynamics in modern diplomacy. Because these two men couldn't be more different. And that matters more than you might think. I'm going to show you why this relationship could reshape this special relationship between America and Britain, what's really at stake for the monarchy, and why King Charles might be facing his biggest diplomatic test yet. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand something most people are completely missing about power, diplomacy, and two very different visions of leadership. Let's start with where we are. January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States. This isn't his first rodeo. He served from 2017 to 2021. But here's what's different this time. He's not dealing with Queen Elizabeth II anymore. Queen Elizabeth met with 13 of the last 14 U.S. presidents. She was a master of diplomacy, known for her ability to navigate any political situation with grace and neutrality. Trump met her twice during his first term, and by all accounts, those meetings went smoothly. But King Charles? He's a different kind of monarch. He spent his entire life, over 5 decades, being outspoken about issues he cares deeply about. Climate change, organic farming, architecture, interfaith dialogue. He's built his identity around these causes. And that's where things get interesting. Because Donald Trump and King Charles don't just have different opinions. They represent fundamentally different worldviews. Let me paint you a picture of just how different these two men are. Climate change. This is ground zero for their differences. King Charles has been sounding the alarm about climate change since the 1970s, before most of us were even born. He's called it the greatest threat facing humanity. He's pushed for renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and green architecture his entire adult life. Donald Trump? During his first term, he pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He's called climate change a hoax. He's championed fossil fuels and rolled back environmental regulations. Communication style. Charles is measured, thoughtful, diplomatic in the traditional sense. He speaks in carefully constructed sentences about long-term thinking and legacy. Trump communicates in short, punchy statements. He's spontaneous, often controversial, and he's built his brand on saying things other politicians won't say. Approach to tradition. Charles is literally the embodiment of tradition. He's a hereditary monarch. But here's the twist. He's also been a modernizer in his own way, pushing the monarchy to be more environmentally conscious and socially aware. Trump positions himself as a disruptor, someone who breaks with political tradition and challenges the establishment. You see the tension here? These aren't just policy disagreements. These are fundamental differences in how they see the world and their role in it. Now you might be thinking, okay, they're different. So what? The king doesn't even have real political power. And you'd be partially right. Constitutionally, King Charles can't set policy. He can't vote. He's supposed to remain politically neutral. But here's what you need to understand. The British monarchy's power isn't in legislation. It's in influence. It's in soft power. It's in symbolism. The special relationship between the US and the UK isn't just about trade deals and military alliances. It's built on centuries of shared history, culture, and values. And the royal family is the face of that relationship for many Americans and Brits alike. When a British monarch welcomes a US president, it's not just a photo op. It's a signal. It sets a tone. It shapes public perception on both sides of the Atlantic. During Trump's first term, he had that stamp of approval from Queen Elizabeth. Those images of him at Buckingham Palace, those state dinners, they mattered. They legitimized him in the eyes of many people, especially traditional conservatives in both countries. But King Charles is in a different position. He's newer to the throne. He's still establishing his reign. And he's dealing with a monarchy that's facing more scrutiny than ever before, especially from younger generations who question whether the institution is even relevant. So every decision he makes about how to engage with Trump or any world leader gets magnified. It's about his credibility, the monarchy's credibility, and Britain's standing on the world stage. So what does this actually look like in practice? Let's talk about the protocol dance that's about to happen. First, The state visit question. Will Trump get an official state visit with all the pomp and circumstance? The carriage rides, the banquet at Buckingham Palace, the works? During his first term, Trump's state visit in 2019 was met with massive protests in London. Thousands of people took to the streets. The famous Trump baby balloon flew over Parliament Square. It was controversial. Charles, as king, doesn't decide whether to invite Trump. That's technically the government's call. But he'll be the host. He'll give the speeches. He'll be in the photos. And he has to do this while maintaining the monarchy's image of being above politics. Here's the tightrope. If Charles appears too warm with Trump, he risks alienating younger Brits and the progressive base who strongly oppose Trump. If he appears cold or reluctant, he risks a diplomatic incident with America's most powerful leader and alienating conservatives. Second, the conversation topics. Traditionally, monarchs and presidents discuss safe, ceremonial topics during public engagements. But what happens in private meetings? Charles has spent his life wanting to influence world leaders on climate action. That's his legacy project. But how does he broach that with someone who fundamentally disagrees? Does he even try? Or does he bite his tongue for the sake of diplomacy? Third, the symbolic gestures. Where they meet, what gets photographed, who else is present? All of this sends messages. Charles will need to balance honoring an important ally with not appearing to endorse policies he personally opposes. Let's zoom out and talk about what's really at stake for King Charles personally. He waited longer than any heir in British history to become king. He's 76 years old. He doesn't have decades to establish his legacy like his mother did. Every decision carries more weight because he has less time. His challenge is this: how do you be a monarch for the 21st century? How do you stay relevant when half your country, especially young people, think the monarchy is outdated? Charles has tried to position himself as the activist king, someone who uses his platform for causes that matter. Climate change, interfaith dialogue, preservation of traditional crafts and architecture. These are his brands. But being an activist king comes with risks. The more you speak out, the more political you seem. The more political you seem, the more you undermine the monarchy's traditional role as a unifying, neutral institution. Trump's presidency puts this tension front and center, because ignoring Trump or giving him the cold shoulder could be seen as political. But warmly embracing him could also be seen as political. There's also the personal element. Charles is, by all accounts, deeply committed to environmentalism. It's not just a political position for him. It's almost spiritual. Having to engage diplomatically with someone who dismisses everything he's worked for? That's got to be challenging on a human level. And remember, Charles is dealing with health challenges too. He's been open about his cancer diagnosis. He's managing a demanding role while managing his health. The stress of navigating this Trump dynamic is real. But here's what's motivating. King Charles has shown resilience his entire life. He's been mocked, underestimated, and overshadowed. And yet he's persisted with his convictions. Now he's finally in the position he was born for, and he has to figure out how to use it wisely. Here's why this matters to you. Whether you're in your 20s or your 90s, whether you're American, British, or watching from anywhere else in the world, this isn't just about two men. It's about a bigger question. How do we maintain relationships with people we fundamentally disagree with? Think about it. How many of us have family members with completely different political views? How many of us work with people who see the world differently? How many of us are trying to figure out how to bridge divides that feel unbridgeable? Charles and Trump are dealing with that on the world stage. But it's the same human challenge we all face. There's also a lesson here about staying true to your values while still being diplomatic. Charles can't just say whatever he thinks about Trump's policies. He has to find ways to advocate for what he believes in without causing an international incident. That's a skill we could all use. How do you stand for something without burning every bridge? How do you engage with people you disagree with without compromising your core principles? And finally, there's a lesson about legacy. Both of these men are thinking about how they'll be remembered. Trump wants to be remembered as the president who shook things up and put America first. Charles wants to be remembered as the king who modernized the monarchy and championed causes that will outlive him. What do you want to be remembered for? What are you doing today that aligns with that legacy? These are the questions that matter, whether you're running a country, leading a monarchy, or just trying to live a meaningful life. In the coming months, we'll see how this relationship unfolds. Will there be a state visit? How will Charles and Trump interact at international summits? Will Charles find ways to subtly advocate for climate action, or will he stick to safe ceremonial topics? My prediction? Charles will do what he's always done. He'll thread the needle. He'll be cordial and diplomatic in public, because that's his duty. But don't be surprised if he finds subtle ways to advance his causes, maybe through the charities he supports, maybe through carefully worded speeches that don't mention Trump by name, but address the issues that matter to him. Trump, for his part, will likely approach this the way he approached Queen Elizabeth, with respect for the institution, even if he doesn't share Charles's worldview. Say what you want about Trump, but he's shown that he understands the symbolic importance of the monarchy. But the real test will come if there's a crisis. What if there's a major climate event, and Charles feels compelled to speak out? What if Trump makes a decision that directly contradicts Charles's advocacy? How will that tension play out? The UK-US relationship has weathered many storms. It's survived wars, economic crises, and political upheavals. It'll survive this too, but it might look different than it has in the past. King Charles and Donald Trump represent two very different styles of leadership, and watching how they navigate their relationship tells us something important about diplomacy, about compromise, and about how we maintain relationships across deep differences. The special relationship between America and Britain is being tested in new ways. But if history teaches us anything, it's that institutions that adapt survive, and relationships that weather disagreements can become stronger. So keep watching this space, because what happens between King Charles and President Trump will tell us a lot about where we're headed, not just diplomatically, but as human beings trying to coexist in an increasingly divided world. If this video gave you a new perspective, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Charles should engage directly with Trump on climate change, or should he stay neutral? I want to hear your thoughts.